Be a moment. Richard slammed the folder of evidence on the table, Clara's face drained of color. "You betrayed me," he said, his voice trembling with both anger and heartbreak. "You cheated, lied, and stole. How could you?" Across town, young Ethan sat trembling as he finally confessed to his father. "Mom told me not to tell, but I couldn't keep the secret anymore." And Lily, clutching her notebook, whispered to her best friend, "Should I tell Dad what I saw?" These families are about to unravel secrets that will change their lives forever. But before diving into the story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you love this story, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future tales. Betrayal shatters trust and leaves scars that ripple through families, especially on innocent children. In this story, we follow three families: Richard and Clara, John and Emily with their daughter Lily, and Adam and Jessica with their son Ethan. Each family faces the devastating consequences of infidelity, uncovering painful secrets and enduring emotional turmoil. The journey begins when Richard Cole receives a mysterious yellow envelope containing blurry photos of his wife Clara with another man. Stunned and heartbroken, Richard is thrust into a web of deceit. How will these families navigate the fallout of betrayal and find the strength to rebuild? Richard Cole's seemingly perfect world crumbles when he receives an anonymous yellow envelope on a quiet Tuesday evening. Inside, he finds blurry photos of his wife Clara in the arms of another man. At first, he convinces himself it's a misunderstanding, but then a flash drive tucked within reveals a video that shatters any doubt. The images are clear. Clara is not only unfaithful, but deeply entangled in a relationship with a man Richard doesn't recognize. As the reality sinks in, he mutters to himself, "This can't be true. She wouldn't, not Clara." Seeking answers, Richard calls Detective Harris, a private investigator. Harris listens patiently before offering his professional advice. "If you want the truth, Richard, you'll need to dig deeper." Reluctantly, Richard agrees to an investigation, unaware of how far the betrayal will reach or how much it will change his life. Meanwhile, across town, 11-year-old Lily sits at her bedroom window, absent-mindedly sketching in her notebook. It's a typical evening until she notices her mother, Emily, standing in the driveway with a man she doesn't recognize. The two are close, too close for comfort. Lily watches as they share a hushed conversation, punctuated by laughter and lingering glances. When the man finally leaves, Lily rushes downstairs, curiosity and unease swirling within her. "Mom, who was that man?" Lily asks, her wide eyes searching Emily's face for answers. Emily's smile is tight and forced. "Just a colleague, sweetheart, nothing to worry about." Though Lily nods, the seed of suspicion is planted. She begins noticing more: the whispered phone calls, the sudden outings, the excuses. Her once unshakable image of her mother is slowly tarnished, leaving her with more questions than answers. In another part of the city, 13-year-old Ethan faces his own moment of betrayal. It's late afternoon when he comes home from school and hears muffled voices in the kitchen. Expecting his father Adam to be home, he walks in, only to find his mother, Jessica, with a man he's never seen before. The man is seated casually at the table, sipping coffee as though he belongs there. "Who is he? Why is he here?" Ethan demands, his voice trembling with confusion and anger. Jessica's face pales. She moves quickly, standing between Ethan and the stranger. "It's not what you think," she says, her voice shaky. "Please, Ethan, don't tell your dad." Ethan stares at her, his trust unraveling with every word. He knows something is wrong, even if Jessica tries to dismiss it. The weight of the secret she asks him to keep is suffocating, and it follows him everywhere, affecting his schoolwork, his friendships, and his sense of security. Each of these families is thrust into turmoil, their foundations shaken by deceit. For Richard, the discovery of Clara's affair is just the beginning of a deeper investigation. For Lily, her once stable world becomes a confusing maze of secrets. And for Ethan, the burden of his mother's betrayal is a heavy cross to bear. As their lives intersect in unexpected ways, they are all forced to confront a painful question. What happens when the people you trust the most shatter your faith in them? Richard, determined to uncover the full extent of Clara's betrayal, officially hires Detective Harris. Known for his thoroughness and discretion, Harris dives headfirst into the case, investigating Clara's activities over the past year. What he discovers leaves Richard reeling. He's been transferring money into an offshore account, Harris explains during a late-night phone call. Small amounts at first, barely noticeable, but over time it's added up to a significant sum. And Jake Patterson, the man she's been seeing, he's not just some random fling. He's a con artist, Richard. Clara's involvement with him might be more than just personal. Richard grips the edge of his desk, his knuckles turning white. His mind races as he tries to reconcile the woman he loved with the one Harris is describing. She didn't just betray me, she stole from me, he mutters, the words heavy with disbelief. Harris continues. It's worse than that, Richard. If she's been helping Jake in his schemes, there could be legal repercussions. You need to think carefully about your next steps. The betrayal isn't just emotional, it's financial, professional, and potentially criminal. The once clear path of confronting Clara now feels like navigating a minefield, with each step threatening to expose a new danger. At the same time, 11-year-old Lily is dealing with her own growing suspicions. Ever since seeing her mother Emily with the stranger in their driveway, Lily has been hyper-aware of her mother's behavior. The late-night phone calls, the sudden errands, and the occasional evasive answers all add up to something Lily can't quite explain, but one afternoon, while working on her homework in the living room, Lily hears her mother's muffled voice coming from the kitchen. Curiosity gets the better of her, and she quietly approaches, standing just out of sight. "I told you, not now," Emily whispers sharply. "I'll find a way to make time, but you need to stop calling during the day." Lily's heart sinks as she hears the man's voice faintly on the other end of the line. Though she can't make out the words, the tone is unmistakable, intimate and familiar. Her stomach churns as her worst fears begin to solidify. Later that evening, Lily confides in her best friend Hannah during a sleepover. They sit cross-legged on the bedroom floor, the dim glow of a lamp casting long shadows on the walls. "Do you think I should tell my dad?" Lily asks, her voice barely above a whisper. "Will things get worse if I do?" Hannah hesitates, chewing on her bottom lip. "I don't know, Lily. Maybe. But don't you think your dad deserves to know? I mean, if it were me, I'd want to know the truth, even if it hurt." Lily looks down at her hands, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on her small shoulders. Telling her father would mean shattering the fragile illusion of their happy family, but staying silent feels like a betrayal of her own. As night falls, Lily lies awake, staring at the ceiling and replaying her mother's words in her head. The idea of confronting her mother terrifies her, but the thought of her father being kept in the dark feels even worse. In her heart, Lily knows she can't carry this secret alone forever. Both Richard and Lily find themselves at crossroads, grappling with revelations that threaten to destroy their families. For Richard, the betrayal runs deeper than he ever imagined, forcing him to consider not just personal loss but legal consequences. For Lily, the innocent world of childhood has been cracked open, leaving her to decide whether to protect her father with the truth or shield herself from the fallout of exposing it. How much longer can they both carry these secrets before everything comes crashing down? Ethan had always been a bright and cheerful 13-year-old, but ever since he caught his mother, Jessica, with a strange man in their kitchen, something had changed. The burden of the secret she begged him to keep was too heavy for his young shoulders. He became withdrawn, his once consistent grades began to slip, and his relationships with friends grew distant. At school, his teachers noticed the change. "Ethan seems distracted," one remarked to another after class. "He's usually so focused, but now he just stares at his desk." At home, Adam, Ethan's father, noticed too. "What's going on with you, son?" he asked one evening. Ethan shrugged and muttered a non-committal "nothing." Adam could sense something was wrong, but Ethan's reluctance to talk left him at a loss. One night, as Ethan struggled with his homework, the weight of his mother's betrayal finally overwhelmed him. Tears streamed down his face as he remembered Jessica's pleading words. "Please, Ethan, don't tell your dad." He couldn't bear the guilt anymore. "Dad," Ethan said quietly, standing in the doorway of Adam's home office. Adam turned, immediately noticing the tears in Ethan's eyes. "Ethan, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice full of concern. Ethan's resolve crumbled, and he began to sob. "Mom told me not to tell," he managed to say between gasps, "but I can't keep this secret anymore." Adam stood up and moved closer, his heart racing. What secret, Ethan? What's going on? Through his tears, Ethan confessed everything. He told Adam about the man in the kitchen, how Jessica had asked him to stay silent, and how it had been eating away at him ever since. Adam's face turned red with anger as he listened. He struggled to keep his voice calm for Ethan's sake, but the betrayal cut deep. "She brought that man into our house," he said, his voice rising. "She made you lie to me?" Ethan nodded, his shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't know what to do." Adam pulled Ethan into a hug, his anger momentarily replaced by a fierce protectiveness. "It's not your fault, son," he said firmly. "None of this is your fault. You did the right thing by telling me." As Ethan sobbed in his father's arms, Adam felt his resolve harden. He knew what he had to do, not just for himself, but for Ethan, who deserved a home built on honesty and trust. Richard sat at the dining table, a folder of damning evidence in front of him. Clara walked in, her expression wary. She had noticed Richard's distant behavior over the past few days, but she hadn't expected what was coming. "We need to talk," Richard said, his voice steady but cold. Clara hesitated before sitting down. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to sound casual, though the tension in the room was palpable. Richard opened the folder and slid it toward her. Inside were the photos, bank statements, and the investigator's report. Clara's eyes widened as she flipped through them, her face turning pale. "Explain this," Richard demanded, his voice rising. "Explain the photos, the money, Jake Patterson. Explain how you thought you could betray me, cheat on me, and steal from me without me finding out." Clara's hands trembled as she pushed the folder away. "This isn't what it looks like," she stammered. "You're misunderstanding everything." "Don't lie to me, Clara," Richard snapped, slamming his hand on the table. "I have everything right here. The pictures, the offshore accounts, the messages. You betrayed me, Clara. You cheated, lied, and stole." Clara's eyes filled with tears, but instead of apologizing, she grew defensive. "You don't understand, Richard," she said, her voice shaking. "I was lonely. You were always working, always busy with your career. I felt invisible in our marriage." Richard stared at her, disbelief etched across his face. "So your solution was to turn to a con artist, to sneak around behind my back, drain our accounts, and destroy everything we built together." Clara's tears spilled over as she continued. "Jake made me feel seen, Richard. He made me feel like I mattered, something I haven't felt from you in years." Richard shook his head, anger boiling beneath the surface. "You think that justifies what you've done? Clara, this isn't just about the affair. You jeopardized our future, our stability, everything we've worked for. And for what? To feel seen by some scammer?" Clara leaned forward, her voice desperate. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't think it would hurt you like this." Richard laughed bitterly. "Didn't think it would hurt me? You tore our marriage apart, Clara. Do you even care about the damage you've done, or are you just sorry you got caught?" For a moment, Clara said nothing, her face a mixture of guilt and defiance. "You pushed me away, Richard," she finally said, her voice soft but accusatory. "If you had been there for me, this wouldn't have happened." Richard's fists clenched as he stood up. "No, Clara, this isn't about me. This is about your choices. You could have talked to me, gone to counseling, done anything but this. You don't get to blame me for your betrayal." The room fell silent as Clara looked away, unable to meet Richard's gaze. He took a deep breath, his voice cold and final. "I'll be speaking with a lawyer. This marriage is over." Clara's tears fell freely now, but Richard didn't look back as he walked out of the room. The weight of her betrayal was too much to bear, and the trust they once shared was shattered beyond repair. John sat on the couch, his face pale and his hands gripping a coffee mug. Across from him, 11-year-old Lily fidgeted nervously, her small hands clutching a pillow. She had been avoiding this conversation for days, but the burden of what she saw had become unbearable. "Lily," John said gently, leaning forward. "What's on your mind? You've been so quiet lately." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes as she blurted out, "Dad, I saw Mom with a man, outside the house. They looked like they were more than just friends." John froze, his heart pounding. "What do you mean, sweetheart? When was this?" "A few weeks ago," Lily whispered. I thought maybe I was wrong, but then I heard her talking to him on the phone. She said things that didn't sound right. John sat back, the weight of Lily's words crashing down on him. He wanted to deny it, to tell himself it couldn't be true, but the look in his daughter's eyes made it impossible. That evening, after putting Lily to bed, John confronted Emily. She was in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone when he walked in, his expression stern. Emily, he said, his voice steady but firm, we need to talk. Now. Emily glanced up, surprised by his tone. What's wrong? John took a deep breath and said, Lily saw you with someone, a man. She overheard your phone calls too. Tell me the truth. What's going on? Emily's face drained of color, and she quickly looked away. John, it's not what you think. Don't lie to me, Emily, he snapped, slamming his hand on the counter. How could you do this to us? To Lily? Emily's defenses crumbled under his glare. It was a mistake, she admitted, her voice trembling. I didn't want you to find out like this. John's hands trembled with anger. A mistake? Sneaking around behind my back? Betraying your family? That's not a mistake, Emily. That's a choice. Emily tried to plead her case. I wasn't happy, John. I felt like we were just going through the motions, like we'd lost what we had. But instead of talking to me, you chose to destroy our family? John said bitterly. You didn't just hurt me, Emily. You hurt Lily. How do you even begin to explain this to her? Emily looked down, unable to answer. John walked out of the kitchen, his heart breaking, knowing their marriage would never be the same. Meanwhile, in another household, Adam sat at the dinner table with his son, Ethan, the weight of betrayal still fresh in his mind. Ethan had finally unburdened himself, telling Adam about the man he saw in their kitchen and how Jessica had begged him to keep it a secret. Adam waited until Jessica came home, his emotions simmering just below the surface. When she walked in, he wasted no time. Jessica, we need to talk, he said, his voice low but laced with anger. Jessica frowned, sensing the tension. What's going on? Adam gestured for her to sit. Ethan told me everything. About the man in the kitchen, about you making him lie to me. Jessica's face paled, and she quickly glanced at Ethan, who was sitting silently at the table. Adam, it's not... Adam cut her off, his voice rising. Don't you dare try to deny it, Jessica. You made our son carry the weight of your lies. Do you have any idea what that's done to him? Jessica's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Ethan. I was scared, Adam. I didn't want to lose everything. Scared, Adam repeated, his voice shaking with fury. You didn't think about what this would do to Ethan or to me. You were only thinking about yourself. Jessica tried to explain. It wasn't serious. I didn't mean for it to happen. Adam slammed his hand on the table. Not serious? You brought another man into our house, Jessica. You betrayed our marriage and made our son lie to cover for you. How could you put him in that position? Ethan, silent until now, finally spoke up, his voice trembling. Mom, I didn't want to keep your secret. I didn't want to lie to Dad. Jessica turned to him, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Ethan. I never wanted to hurt you. But her apologies rang hollow. Adam shook his head, his voice heavy with disappointment. Sorry isn't enough, Jessica, not for what you've done. As Jessica looked at the faces of her family, she realized the extent of the damage she had caused. The trust was gone, and with it, the foundation of the life they had built together. The courtroom was filled with tension as Richard sat at the plaintiff's table, his lawyer Sarah beside him. Across the room, Clara avoided his gaze, her lawyer flipping through a thick stack of papers. Your Honor, Sarah began, standing confidently. This case isn't about irreconcilable differences. It's about deceit, betrayal, and financial fraud. My client has provided indisputable evidence of Mrs. Cole's infidelity and her unlawful actions regarding their joint finances. Sarah approached the bench, holding up a file. Here, we have bank records showing Mrs. Cole's unauthorized transfers to an offshore account. Additionally, the surveillance footage clearly identifies her accomplice, Jake Patterson, a known con artist. Clara's lawyer, a man in his 50s with a calm demeanor, stood to respond. Your Honor, while my client admits to certain personal mistakes, the accusations of financial fraud are exaggerated. These transfers were small, and there's no evidence to suggest she intended to harm the family's finances. Richard clenched his fists under the table, anger bubbling at the blatant downplay of Clara's actions. The judge, a stern woman with graying hair, peered over her glasses. "Mr. Harrison," she said, addressing Clara's lawyer, "the evidence presented is substantial. Mrs. Cole not only betrayed her marriage, but also jeopardized her family's financial stability. The facts speak for themselves." Richard exhaled, relief washing over him as the judge continued. "In light of the evidence, I rule in favor of Mr. Cole. He will retain ownership of their shared assets, and Mrs. Cole is ordered to repay the funds she embezzled. Custody arrangements will be addressed separately." As the gavel struck, Clara lowered her head, tears streaming down her face. Richard, though victorious, felt no joy, only a deep sense of loss for the life they once shared. For John, the legal proceedings were less combative but no less painful. After Lily's revelation, he filed for divorce, citing Emily's infidelity and the emotional impact it had on their family. The judge, after reviewing the case, awarded John full custody of Lily. Emily was granted limited visitation rights, contingent on her participation in therapy to rebuild trust. The day Emily packed her belongings was somber. Lily watched from the living room, clutching her favorite stuffed animal. "I'm sorry, Lily," Emily said softly, kneeling to her daughter's level. "I never meant to hurt you or your dad." Lily nodded, her expression conflicted. "I miss you, Mom, but I'm glad you're not lying to us anymore." Tears filled Emily's eyes as she kissed Lily's forehead. "I'll work on being better, sweetheart, I promise." As Emily walked out the door, John placed a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder. "We'll be okay, kiddo," he said, his voice steady. "We have each other." For Adam and Ethan, the fallout from Jessica's betrayal was equally challenging. After learning the full extent of her actions, Adam filed for divorce and sought to protect Ethan from further emotional harm. In court, Adam presented evidence of Jessica's infidelity and her attempt to involve Ethan in her deception. The judge, recognizing the emotional toll on Ethan, ruled in Adam's favor, granting him primary custody. Jessica was given limited visitation rights, conditional upon her ability to demonstrate accountability and rebuild trust. Back at home, Adam sat with Ethan at the kitchen table. The house felt quieter without Jessica, but there was a sense of relief in the air. "Dad," Ethan said quietly, poking at his plate of spaghetti, "do you think Mom will ever come back?" Adam sighed, choosing his words carefully. "I don't know, Ethan, but what I do know is that we'll be okay no matter what happens." Ethan looked up, his eyes filled with a mix of sadness and hope. "I just want us to be okay again, Dad." Adam reached across the table and placed a reassuring hand on Ethan's. "We will be, son. We'll get through this together." For Richard, John, and Adam, the courtroom victories marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The legal battles had been grueling, but they had fought not only for themselves, but for the well-being of their children. As Clara, Emily, and Jessica faced the consequences of their choices, the families they left behind began the long process of healing. It wouldn't be easy, and the scars of betrayal would take time to fade, but in the quiet moments at home, surrounded by their children, Richard, John, and Adam found solace in the knowledge that they were building stronger, more honest lives. The legal battles were over, but the journey to rebuild had just begun. Each family faced an uncertain future, yet they held on to hope, determined to move forward one step at a time. After the dust settled, Richard found himself standing at the edge of a new life. The betrayal, the court battles, and the emotional toll had left scars, but they also gave him clarity. He poured his energy into his career, taking on new projects and rediscovering the passion he once had for his work. One afternoon, Detective Harris called to check in. "So, what's your next plan, Richard?" Harris asked, his voice steady and familiar. Richard leaned back in his chair, a faint smile crossing his face. "To rebuild. And this time, I'll do it right. No shortcuts, no distractions. Just a life I can be proud of." Beyond work, Richard made a conscious effort to reconnect with old friends, many of whom had drifted away during his tumultuous marriage. Dinners, casual outings, and long conversations reminded him of the importance of genuine relationships. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of peace and hope for the future. In their quiet home, John and Lily found solace in each other. The betrayal had shaken their family to its core, but it had also forged a stronger bond between father and daughter. John became more present in Lily's life, making time for her school activities, hobbies, and simply sitting together on the couch watching her favorite shows. Lily, still processing her emotions, turned to writing as an outlet. Every evening she sat by the window with her notebook, creating stories that reflected her feelings. John often joined her, bringing her a cup of tea or simply sitting nearby as she wrote. One evening, as Lily finished a short story, she handed it to John. He read it carefully, his heart swelling with pride. "You have a gift, Lily," he said softly, his voice full of admiration. "Keep writing." Lily smiled shyly. "Writing makes me feel better, Dad, like I can say all the things I can't say out loud." John nodded, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Then don't ever stop. You've been through so much, and this is your way of healing. I'm here for you, always." Their evenings became a cherished routine, filled with quiet moments of connection that neither of them would trade for anything. For Ethan, the road to recovery was more challenging. His mother's betrayal had left him with deep emotional wounds, and the weight of keeping her secret for so long had taken a toll. Adam, determined to help his son heal, enrolled him in therapy, hoping it would give him the tools to process his feelings. At first, Ethan was hesitant to open up. The sessions felt strange, and talking about his emotions was uncomfortable, but over time, his therapist's gentle encouragement helped him feel safe enough to share. "Even," the therapist said during one session, "you've been through a lot, but you're stronger than you think. The fact that you're here talking about it shows just how brave you are." Ethan looked down at his hands, fiddling with the edge of his sleeve. "I just want to feel normal again," he admitted quietly. The therapist smiled warmly. "That's exactly what we're working toward. Healing takes time, but you're already on the right path." At home, Adam made a point to create a supportive environment for Ethan. They spent time together building a birdhouse for the backyard, cooking meals, and even just talking during walks in the park. Each moment reminded Ethan that he wasn't alone and that his father would always be there. Though their journeys were different, Richard, John, and Adam each found a way to move forward. Richard embraced his independence and rediscovered the value of meaningful connections. John became Lily's unwavering anchor, fostering her creativity and helping her heal. And Adam stood by Ethan's side, offering love and support as his son worked through the pain of betrayal. In the quiet moments of their lives, they each reflected on the lessons they had learned. Betrayal had shaken their worlds, but it had also given them the strength to rebuild, stronger, wiser, and more determined to protect what truly mattered. For Richard, John, Adam, Lily, and Ethan, the scars of the past would always remain, but they no longer defined them. Instead, they became reminders of resilience, hope, and the power of starting over. Together, they proved that even after the darkest moments, there is always a way forward. Betrayal had cast a long shadow over the lives of Richard, John, Adam, and their children. Yet, as time passed, each family found their own way to reflect on the experience and the lessons it brought. The wounds were deep, but they had sparked a resilience they never knew they possessed. For Richard, the loss of Clara had forced him to confront his own vulnerabilities and rediscover his sense of self. Sitting in his newly renovated home office, he reflected on the journey he had taken. "Sometimes," he said to an old friend over coffee, "losing someone shows you who you really are." He had rebuilt his life, not just for himself, but as a testament to his strength and integrity. John, too, had found clarity in the aftermath of Emily's betrayal. Despite the pain, he focused on building a stable and nurturing environment for Lily. One evening, as they watched the sunset from their porch, John shared his thoughts with her. "Even in the darkest moments," he said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders, "there's always a path forward." Lily nodded, her notebook resting on her lap. "You are right, Dad," she replied softly. "Writing has helped me see things differently. We're stronger now because we have each other." For Ethan, his journey was one of emotional healing. Through therapy and the unwavering support of Adam, he began to understand the importance of family, even in the face of imperfection. Sitting at the dinner table one evening, he turned to his father and said, "Family isn't about perfection, It's about always being there for each other. Adam smiled, pride filling his heart. That's exactly right, son, and I'll always be here for you. The stories of Richard, John, and Adam converged on a few universal truths: the fragility of trust, the unyielding strength of family, and the hope that comes with rebuilding. Each character's journey highlighted the resilience required to move forward after betrayal, showing that while the scars may never fully fade, they can become symbols of survival and growth. In the end, these families proved that even when trust is broken and lives are shaken, the human spirit is capable of rising again, stronger, wiser, and more determined to cherish what truly matters. This story serves as a poignant reminder of the profound impact betrayal can have on individuals and families. Trust, once broken, is challenging to rebuild, and the fallout often extends beyond the immediate relationships, deeply affecting children and loved ones. However, it also carries a powerful message of resilience, healing, and hope. The characters demonstrate that even in the face of heartbreak, there is strength to be found in confronting the truth and moving forward. The story highlights the importance of accountability, the need for open communication in relationships, and the value of unwavering support within families. Ultimately, it underscores a universal truth. While betrayal can shatter lives, it also offers an opportunity for growth, self-discovery, and the rebuilding of a life rooted in honesty and authenticity. In the darkest of times, the bonds of family and the human capacity for forgiveness and resilience can light the way to a brighter future.